Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jimmy here with The Other Chef. On this channel, we talk about the food service industry. We also do some food product demos and check out some of the eats and drinks in the local areas. So if you're interested in some of those topics, consider subscribing. So we're at the end of the Travel Scandinavia series. There are some things that I want to talk about, my experiences in being there. So here are 5 things that I am going to talk about in this very quick video. So let's get to it. Okay, number 1, it is very expensive. So Scandinavia alone is very expensive because it is a very remote area, and also their economies are a lot different than how it is here in the States. For those who don't know, Iceland is just a huge volcanic island, so they don't really grow a lot of items on the ground. They have to use geothermal technology to be able to grow stuff hydroponically in greenhouses. And I mentioned that in the video previously about the cool things that they did. And there will be a link below on one of the greenhouses that you can actually tour and have some food while you're there. The other thing is that this is a cashless society. So the 3 countries that I went to, which were Iceland, Sweden, and Denmark, were mostly cashless, meaning everything was done by card. Now, there were some exceptions of some places do take cash and some places don't. Reason why is because some of the public restrooms, you have to use coins or cash to be able to access the bathrooms. Now, I know in America it sounds completely silly, but I think this kind of makes sense because now you're accountable for your actions of using the public restroom. Number 2, so the airlines that I used were Iceland Air and Norwegian Airlines. In a previous video, I mentioned that I used Iceland Air primarily to take advantage of the Icelandic stopover experience when traveling to Reykjavik, Iceland, and then eventually to my destination. Quick synopsis was Iceland Air, you can use the stopover experience for up to 7 days on the front end of your trip or the back end of your trip. So I only did 2 days. I wish I was able to do 3. Had I known now what I've learned from being in Scandinavia, because I loved Iceland. It was probably one of the best places I enjoyed. I wish I had a chance to explore a little bit more in Iceland. A side note about Norwegian Airlines is that it's a low-cost intercontinental airline that's mostly focused in Europe. They do have some transcontinental flights coming from the States to Europe, but it's mostly East Coast. Another thing with Iceland and Norwegian Airlines is that they are very strict on weight limit when you're packing your bag, which segues into number 3, pack light. Even though I was on this trip for 10 days, to be honest, I didn't really use everything that I had on my packing list. Speaking of which, my packing list: 5 t-shirts, 2 long sleeve shirts, 1 pair of long johns, 3 pairs of pants. 1 was insulated, 1 was a pair of jeans, and 1 was a khaki slacks. 1 workout set, just athletic shorts and athletic shirt. 7 pairs of underwear, 1 parka that was a layered parka. Links will be below for those items. Hat, gloves, scarf, and a neck gaiter to protect my neck if I didn't want it to have my scarf, because the scarf was not only heavy, but it can get really hot. 5 pairs of socks and 2 pairs of long socks. 3 pairs of shoes. 1 was my hiking boots that I wore on the plane, pair of sneakers, and a pair of shower shoes. In regards to camera equipment, I actually brought too much equipment. And I know it sounds silly, it's only because I was a little bit of paranoid of what I was going to do when I was going to go through the trip. The camera that I'm currently shooting on right now is actually the Sony a6400 with the 10-18 f4 lens. But the cameras that I was actually using were 3 different cameras, and this was my other lesson learned about being there, and that was focus on trying to just use 1 camera unless it requires a different situation. I know a lot of people were using primarily, including myself, was using my phone, and the phone that I was using is the Google Pixel 1, and that's a very good phone. However, because of the fact that I was always shooting in vertical mode and I should have been shooting in horizontal mode, I would have been able to get the full frame of the entire picture. The other camera that I used was a GoPro camera for action shots. Obviously, you saw some of those shots when I was at Iceland, going to like the pools or going to see the geysers or the park. And also it was mounted on the bicycle in Denmark when I was visiting the city, and I wanted to use the GoPro for a point of view when I'm going to wherever I was going. But the camera that I was primarily using, and I still use it, it's just currently it's charging up right now, is the Sony RX100 Mark V. Now, I know the Mark 7 is currently out right now, and it's a beautiful camera, but I love the Mark V because of one thing, and that is it is the last iteration of the camera to have it at an f-stop of 1.8. So when you see me shooting all those low light scenes when I was in the restaurants and whatnot, it was thanks to that camera I can shoot low light. Now, keeping in mind that the camera was not stabilized and I had to put it a lot on a tripod. When I was walking around, you saw a lot of shake. But hopefully now when I work on getting another camera, probably the A6600 or whatever new camera that plans to come out. And oh, by the way, a disclaimer, all of these camera items and equipment were all purchased on my dime. I'm not sponsored by Google, GoPro, or Sony Alpha, even though I would love to. So Google, Sony, or GoPro, if you see this, sponsor me. Okay, in all seriousness though, I brought too much equipment to the thing. If I was able to learn from what I was doing, the first thing I would have not brought was my tripod, because to be honest, I really didn't use it. I would have used the GorillaPod, which is right now being mounted on my camera. Now, the last piece of equipment that I used for the trip, which was actually beneficial, was my selfie stick. Now, I don't use this stick anymore because now I have a monopod and whatnot, but the selfie stick I had was able to extend my reach because the Sony RX100 Mark V doesn't have a wide focal length as much, so I had to extend the selfie stick a little further. Aside from that, I think my experience now is that if I'm gonna go to travel again, I would use this camera, which is right now being used to shoot the film right now. You notice in my videos I didn't have any wind muffs on my camera, and now I have upgraded to a different camera. I decided to get a better microphone system. So bags, the two bags that I originally used, and the first one was actually just a simple army style backpack. It was basically a 35 to expandable to 40 liters. I still use it for certain things, but now since I have upgraded to the Wanderer 31 and a very basic hard shell suitcase. Now, the other bag that you saw in the beginning of the video was a bag that was given to me from my workplace, and I'm gonna tell you, it was poorly made. Man, the stitching came out of it after 2 days of just going through Iceland. I had to get rid of the bag, and that's how I upgraded with this new bag that I got in Reykjavik, Iceland. It's very durable. I love it. It's hard. You can double it as a carrying case or a backpack. That was primarily my day bag when I was going out into the city. A couple of tips that I will tell you when you're going on a day trip with somewhere. So always the thing that I would tell you would be bring an extra change of clothes, bring sunscreen, and also bring whatever camera equipment that you know that you're going to use for that trip. Like for example, if you know that you're going to need extra batteries or extra memory cards, bring it. Another reason why I would say pack light as well is because I bought some items that I went to the stores and bought some clothes and bought some souvenirs so I can send it back with me, but I realized that my bag wasn't going to be able to hold everything, so I had that country's postal service, and man, it costs a lot. Oh, did I remind you that going to Scandinavia is expensive? Yeah. So moving on to the last point, I wanted to share was, if you want to see everything that's going on in those areas that I mentioned. So I only went to really 3 cities: Reykjavik, Iceland, Stockholm, Sweden, and Copenhagen, Denmark. Try to stay in the old town area. Reykjavik, Iceland is really not that big of a city. Like, I was able to check out the entire city in about maybe 4 hours. But when I was in Stockholm was huge. Now, I stayed just outside of Gamla Stan, and I wish I was able to stay in the old town because there was a lot going on there. Transportation is still accessible, and there's so much to do in that area. In regards to staying in Copenhagen, Copenhagen's actually really big, and I personally didn't mind staying right by the airport, but anytime I wanted to go into the old town or see the royal palaces in Copenhagen, I always have to take the metro, and I think that was the only drawback. Let's recap on those things that I just mentioned. Number 1, it's expensive and a cashless society. Number 2, take advantage of the stopover experience with Iceland Air, and also either Ryanair or Norwegian Airlines for intercontinental flights. Number 3, pack light. Try not to use a lot of camera equipment and focus on a camera set unless you needed a different camera for a certain situation, i.e. action camera. And then finally, try to stay in the old town area so that you have access to everything's going on. So there you have it. Some really great tips and experiences from my trip. I enjoyed my time being in Scandinavia, and I wish I had the opportunity to spend more time and maybe take another trip once this situation has calmed down. Hey, thanks for watching. If you love this video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and hit that bell for notifications on future content on this channel. And be sure to start checking out my cooking series coming up in the month of June while I could finish up making those videos. Hey, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.